What's up guys, how's it going? Slim Shady here. So today I wanted to do an over-explained Gremlin leader fight because kind of like the sentries, I feel like I am just constantly playing this fight incorrectly. This is going to be a little more interesting because I can't show you like me building my deck to this fight because obviously it doesn't really work like that when it's this far in, and sometimes I don't get the right elite. It's floor, what floor is it? Floor 28, like it's pretty far. But anyway, we'll talk about this deck that I got here. So apparently I have 2 angers. I don't know when that happened. Oh, it must have been a transform, that's right. So this deck is pretty, it's got the 9 attacks, the usual. It's only got 1 strike left, which is good. Got 2 in flames. The pinnacle of this deck right now is the battle trance into the seeing red. Got 3 powers, which hopefully battle trance draws a couple of them so they get out of there. I've got the shrug it off and the pommel strike to kind of give me an opportunity to trade cards for energy. So hopefully like one of those hits seeing red. And then it's got pretty good. Impervious is a good get out of jail free card. I'd say this is a pretty okay constructed deck. Like a mid-level, shouldn't die to an elite like this kind of deck. I do have Tiny House, which kind of sucks. My choices there are not very good. Clearly if I'm picking Tiny House there. I've got the Bottled Lightning Battle Trance. A little bit of War Paint. So, what Gremlin Leader does is he will either buff his allies and himself, give them, I think, 10 armor each. He will attack you for, I think it's like 6 times 3 plus his strength, or maybe, yeah, I think it's 6 times 3 plus his strength. Or he will summon. If he has no minions, he has a tendency to summon. If he has minions, he has a tendency to buff and then attack, or attack, depending on the action he's done last. I'm not going to bust open the wiki because I don't care that much. I'd rather kind of get a mouthfeel for this fight, if that kind of makes sense. So you've got the Seeing Red, which is nice. Unfortunately, it does only give us 1 energy right now. I would love to upgrade that, but you know, you always find better things to upgrade. So now we pull into this fight, and there's one of the Inflames. Just doesn't get Pommel Strike to clear. Carnage kills him. I do not want to be weak or frail, like, ever in this fight. So, I feel like the line here is just Inflame, Carnage, Pommel Strike. That's going to do 31 damage. I'd love to throw that Gremlin Leader's way, but I don't think that really makes sense right now, because I cannot have him make me frail and vulnerable all the time. So we're going to go with this line. I might not necessarily need to Pommel Strike here, but I feel like I still should. So here we go. Okay, so now he's forced to summon this turn. Rhino Armaments, because we can. Play the Brutality, play the Clothesline. Now he's at least weak. There's my other Inflame. Here's my Angers, which are also good. So here's where it gets tricky, right? I can deal 50 damage to him. He's gonna buff, he's gonna attack me next turn. These guys will probably attack me next turn. I'm gonna draw an uppercut. I feel like if I can't efficiently deal with these guys, I shouldn't bother. Because otherwise I'm just attacking him, and then he's probably going to try and hit me for 14x3. And that might happen anyway. And maybe this deck doesn't ever get there without a potion. But we have to try, right? Okay, so he doesn't shield himself. That's good to know. We're gonna battle trance. He does not kill me right now. So I think that's kind of I think I just have to let this be a tight fight. You know what I mean? And then Carnage kills. I didn't realize I took myself all the way to 1 health. But that's kind of like the first line of thinking, right? And then you look at this and you go, well, you drew fairly well. Like, I've got 60 damage here. So then we'll go back and we'll think about this again. Because now there's an option where you leave this guy alive and dump another 10 damage into him. I'm just kind of curious what that looks like. It's a lot harder compared to the sentries fight for this to be like not results oriented. Because there's like so much going on, and it's harder to be like, well, obviously you leave the goblin there. There's a lot of like split second decisions you have to try to make. I still think this is the line, but we're gonna try to pommel strike here instead, because maybe he hits me here. If he swings at me here, I can't tell if that's okay or not. It's probably not. No, because I'm like dead. Right? I live with 1 health. So clearly that's not what we want to do. So trying to sneak in 11 damage there is not really the play. No, this deck doesn't... I can't get anything better, right? Like, defending this doesn't really help me. It's like I could game the system and try to hope I get lucky. Just don't know, like, if that's really that good either. Like, clearly, if you look at this results-oriented wise, I do get it. Just barely. Like, it's not something I would have been able to plan for. But, like, that's such huge variance, right? Like, I either get there or I don't. And so now we have to be like, okay, like, looking at what's in your deck, looking at what you could possibly get, like, what kind of decisions would you be trying to make here? So you got this deck, you got a lot of strength gain. You got an uppercut and a clothesline you can try to slam him with. And you want to take him out no matter what. Like, he's gravy if you can. So you draw this, and now you look at your hand. And you go, I'm always throwing Carnage there, because I need to get him out of here. Bash Pommel Strike does it too. but that drops Carnage, which I want because it's a very hard-hitting attack card. And right, so I can drop Carnage here, and then I think about that, and that leaves him at 4. 4 doesn't kill him. I feel like the very first turn, if you have an opportunity to kill both of them, you should take it. So luckily, Bronze Scales bails me out here, and then gives Seeing Red and Flame Pommel Strike, because now it's 11 instead of 9. He kills. So I always need to remember that this is like a very critical time to look at my deck if I don't have it memorized. Because like I can look at this and I could very reliably kind of understand what I'm going to get. Like I'm going to probably weaken him next turn or make him vulnerable. If not, I'm going to have Inflame and a ton of attacks. Which is good, because I think I need to turn and try to rush him down here. Because if he gets to 10 strength, I'm pretty much dead. If he gets to 15 strength, I'm for sure dead. And I probably do play the Brutality, because it's easy, it replaces itself. Unfortunately, his hand isn't a good rush hand, because I drew the Cinder's Bane, I drew the Brutality, I drew the Defend, but... the Brutality also heals me for 2, so it's not as big of a deal. So now I draw this, I know Uppercut's down there, which will mean my next turn is going to be pretty good. I know I'm going to throw a bunch of Angers in the discard pile no matter what happens, so that's also good. I play that every single time because it heals me for 2, gives my cards a lot more reach. Now, it's so hard for me to make a decision around this. If I do not kill any of them, then he's gonna bear down on me with, I think it's 14 x3. I've got no way to really deal with that. Could potentially draw Impervious, but that's like a 25% chance. So like, my first instinct here is to kill both of them. And that is something I think I need to start like not doing. Because it just doesn't seem very correct. So like I think I'm just gonna keep making passes on this. I probably could have full blocked this, but then it would have been weak, and maybe that's okay. I'm gonna play in a way where I kill all of the minions, just to kind of see what that looks like. I kill the minions and I blast them. It's like that's the most health I could possibly have, right? But there's some things that made that happen that I'd like to discuss from like a more mathematical point of view. Because if I don't look at this analytically from like a numbers standpoint, the next time that fight comes up, I'm not going to have any more information than I am just eyeballing this specific fight over and over. So he's got 154 health, right? So ideally, the best order of business he does is he will strength himself when he doesn't have minions. he will summon minions, and he will attack. So that gives you 3 turns, sort of. It's more like 2 turns, right? Because you go here, you force him to summon more minions, or you get unlucky, or lucky. It really kind of depends what you think, right? It's kind of okay for him to attack you when he has 5 strength. But we're gonna do this, right? And you're gonna look at your deck, and you see you could get really close to killing him if you draw uppercut next turn. So let's say you draw uppercut, all of a sudden you're doing like 20 damage a card on most of the shit, and so that's roughly 20, so like 20, 20, 20, 60, 20, 80, 100, 113-ish, or let's say 120. That's very close in 2 cards. So maybe you look at that and you say, well, okay, I'm going to try and do what I know to be 120. So I kind of bricked, right? I have 5 more attacks coming up. I didn't draw my second inflame yet. I didn't get the uppercut in time. So I just say, alright, well, this kind of changes the math, but I'm gonna smack him here. So he's got 140 health left. I still haven't drawn the uppercut. I have the inflame, so now I've got 5 strength. So I can dump 35 damage into him, right? Leave him with 102. 102 is not amazing, but it starts getting there, right? Like, I look at this Impervious Plus and I think, well, I can block his first 14 X2 pretty well. So maybe I start thinking that way, and I didn't play what card is that? I didn't play Brutality, which would have given me another card here. Just something to think about. But maybe I think, okay, well, with Uppercut, a couple damage cards, like, I get there every time. Like, I can do 50 in a turn. This deck is very good at dealing 50 in a turn. So we end this turn. He does get armor to 114. So he's smacking the hell out of me, right? I drop this. I go, okay. I did not draw what I wanted to, really. And part of that was because I didn't use the Brutality to draw, which I definitely should have. 100% of the time. So he's already weak, so he's gonna hit me for 36. But I think I start seeing blood here, right? Because, like, this is 60. That puts him at 50. There's, like, no possible way I don't draw 50 here. And if I do not draw 50, I have Impervious. Or I have, like, Armaments, Defend, Shark It Off. And that's enough. Because he's not gonna attack me twice in a row. I don't think he ever does. So now I look at this and I go, okay, maybe I can block. Because can I do, let's say, what if I do 35 and block 13? I don't think that helps. I think in this specific spot here, I have to race. I know that I win the race. I know that this deck wins me the race. So, with that in mind, I think that holistically I should not be attacking these gremlins. Now, if these guys were attacking me, that could have changed things a lot, right? Because then I would have died. I would have had to throw a defend in there, which might not even be an incorrect idea right now, because he's at 61. I feel like Bronze Scales is going to deal 9 to him, put him at like 51. He's going to get shielded for 10, he's going to be at 61. Maybe I just say I really hope I draw an anger. Both angers. And that's pretty big sell, right? Now you're super lucky again that he's not these two aren't attacking, which is very nice. I feel like they usually do when they're all shielded like this. But you kill him with Pommel Strike Carnage. There are definitely ways this didn't work out. You drew an anger. There was an anger at the bottom here. I think that's all pretty good. But you gotta start like mathematically thinking like, okay, what's he gonna do the next 3 turns? Because I think you always, well, most of the time, unless you're looking at this and you go like, well, it's the Rage Goblin, I can kill him in 3 turns. Maybe you do that, but still, it makes me really uncomfortable to try that. You always play the Brutality here. I think it matters a lot, like, what's in your deck, too, right? Like, there's this Impervious that I think I'm going to find. And so, with that Impervious, I'm not afraid of the first 12x2. So we rush him down. He gets shielded. I don't draw it, which sucks, okay. But I did draw both the angers. Maybe I just block for 5. And he's dead. But this is where it gets really challenging, right? Because you're looking at this, and you're going, yeah, like, it makes sense to do this. And it makes sense to do this. And I know, maybe the thing is, like, you know if you rush him here, you will guarantee kill him, kind of no matter what happens. Even if he hits you for the 15x3, whatever it is, because he's weak, it's not as big of a deal. But you could force him to summon again, which, it's possible he hits you, but even if he hits you here, you're in the same spot, because he has to hit you and then he summons. So I think maybe with that in mind, it's better always to kill both of them, because I think the variance says that's better. It's like now we can Impervious, Anger, Defend, and you're sitting pretty well. You're gonna be weak next turn, maybe that's a mistake. But you only need to do 33, you have a shit ton of Angers. Maybe that's right. So I think because you could do it, you should. So now I'd like to, I think I've got a fairly decent idea of, in general, like how to handle this fight. you have to, every single turn, you have to look at your deck, and you have to go, what does it look like to kill Gremlin Leader? Like, outside of everything else, what does it look like to kill Gremlin Leader? What do I have to do? How can I do 154? And honestly, that's how I should be handling all of the bosses. And maybe that's kind of the ultimate epiphany of all this, right? But in order to have an easy Gremlin Leader fight, you need to be able to drop some AoE. If you prefer, like the Thorns help deals 3 damage to these guys when they attack you. That's pretty cool, right? You want to be able to drop 20 on fat gremlins. If this was 2 fat gremlins, that would be unlucky, and not much you can do about it, but do your best, right? So I'm looking for the Carnages, looking for the like the Twin Strike Pluses of the world, things like that. Basically the same things that are good against Act 1 elites are good against Gremlin Leader for killing the minions first, right? Unless you got like a serious AoE like M8. M8 makes this fight a joke, right? Because you just crush them and then you get a free 2 turns on Gremlin Leader. So like cards that can do 20 on demand are great. Anything that makes you scale quickly is good. Weaken is very powerful, but you want something that'll give you a couple turns of Weaken with how it's performed, right? So I think because you can kill him here, you should, in most cases. Because you look at your deck, you look at your discard pile, and you say, well, if I get an opportunity to put vulnerable on him, which you will, either the turn he's attacking you and you just say screw it, or the turn he's summoning. Both times are very adequate times to play vulnerable. So you say if you get vulnerable on him, you, with the angers in the discard pile, you will reliably be able to do about 60 damage a turn, which is what you need to get there. So if you could do 60 damage a turn, it makes sense to attack these little guys. Now, if you couldn't do 60 damage a turn, and you're trying to just get out of this fight, you look at this hand and you say, well, I can't always do 60 damage a turn. Maybe I can do 40 damage a turn. Or maybe 50 instead of 60. So like you look at that and you say, well, if I attack these, he hits me, summons, hits me again, it's over, right? So you would rather him buff here, hit you, and then buff again. Because I don't think he ever hits you twice in a row. Because if he buffs here, hits you, buffs again, tries to hit you, that's okay. That's 4 turns. You're gonna take some damage. You might take damage from these guys. You're very lucky that these are shield gremlins here. Because if these were any other gremlins, you would have to address them. Potentially. It depends on how much health you have, all that kind of stuff, right? And this turn you're still, well, you could fit in a defend if you wanted to. But I think also, like, I over-defend on this fight, because... whew, exhausting, right? The 8 damage doesn't matter. as much as the like 17 times 3s do. So like you need to be able to take a little bit of damage early to set stuff up, right? Like taking that 10 on the very beginning of the fight to let Thorns do its thing. So, with the way the deck looks, you know the vulnerable's coming out. You know you've got a ton of angers with 5 strength. Like, I think you do this every time. Because you're expecting him to summon here. $37.16 doesn't do it. So what was different about this? I think there's just some variance, right? And I think that's kind of it. So as far as the deck goes, you need scaling to be able to dump 50. Like your goal is to get like 50 damage roughly in a turn. Flex pots are very helpful. Vulnerable's obviously very helpful. Otherwise, this is a brutal fight. So it's hard for, like, when I think about how Silent gets this done, my only ideas are like Wraith form and maybe the explosion, poison corpse explosion. Because otherwise you're just kind of, it's hard, right? I don't think you drew like lucky here. I mean, you could have drawn Impervious that first turn, and maybe that would have been enough to throw it off, but it's hard to say, right? But I think, yeah, the main idea is you gotta be able to do like 22 damage. Coming into here with a Fire Pot, if you can't deal 22 damage, is good. Fire Pot also kind of normalizes the damage you need on Gremlin Leader. Just kind of like things like that, right? You gotta accelerate the fight. I have to stop. I think my main takeaway from this fight and Sentry's fight is I have to stop defending in the first 3 turns, roughly, because I have to make defending less of a priority the first 3 turns, because I have to be able to get to him. He scales more than me. I don't have a card that says like 2 mana, gain 5 strength, and block for 10. If that card existed, I could be able to fight how I try to fight him. But that card doesn't exist, so I have to rush him like I would rush any other person. And killing his minions gives me a secondary turn to rush while he summons. So that's kind of the gist of it, right? Like I said, I can't really like reliably make a deck to build this, but in my next few runs, I'd like to kind of explain Gremlin Leader, because I need to get used to fighting him and understanding what makes him tick and mitigating that, right? So you should see in my next couple videos an emphasis and an explanation on how I feel the Gremlin Leader fight will go with different cards. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something. I know this is more of just like a freeform ramble, and like I said, Gremlin Leader is a fight I don't understand very well. So this is kind of like my first impressions. This is me just digging into his psyche a little bit, and trying to give myself a new perspective on how I take this fight, because I am really tired of just dying to him over and over. And part of it is deck construction, and that's part of the concept of this, right? There's always two parts to preparing for any elite. Even the sentries fight, like, you construct your deck to deal 44 damage over 2 turns for the sentries fight, so that every single time, very reliably, like 60% of the time, you can pop one of the sentries. It's the same kind of gist here. Like, I'm constructing my deck so I can ideally do 40 damage split across 2 people the first turn, get some sort of scaling that lets me either like blow myself wide open with defense or deal about 160 damage over about 4 turns. And that's what this game is all about. It's about taking each challenge, dissecting it, and then understanding when you've solved one challenge to progress to the next one. And that's what I'm gonna have to plan for to really ascend my gameplay. So that's a long-winded way to say enjoy my next few Ironclad runs. The Watcher video that's scheduled will not have this, so starting Tuesday should have videos that kind of emphasize this fight. Anyway, I hope you guys learned something. Have a fantastic day.